You're listening to She Speaks, a Let Her Speak podcast that celebrates women's fearlessness, resiliency, and readiness to change the world. Welcome back, friends, to the She Speaks podcast. This is Catherine Porth, and I'm the founder of Let Her Speak. If this is the first episode that you have listened to our podcast, welcome. We are diving into conversations between the women who graduated from our Let Her Lead program, both aspiring and established leaders in their communities, and the mentors and coaches that have been guiding them through their leadership journey along the way. The two women that you'll be listening to today are Kirby Deal and Erika Biddix, two dynamite, amazing women in their own right, both doing so much work to support women in their communities, empowering women to lead the lives that they want to have. And funnily enough, they actually really didn't have a whole lot of connection to each other. They knew each other before the program, but they didn't really ever interact with each other too often until we matched them together. And it just seemed like fate aligned for these two women to become mentor and mentees. In this conversation that you're about to hear, you'll be hearing a lot from Kirby about the journey that she's been on, especially the journey of remembering that she is a whole human being outside of the titles that she has in her career and her work, which is something that I think a lot of us struggle with, is separating that our title is our title and we are a whole other human being with a lot of other complexities to us outside of what those titles are, and that it's okay to be a full human being outside of those titles. They dive into what it means to both of them for the legacies that they are leaving behind and fully embracing the fact that they are leaving legacies. And it's something that they need to be celebrating and something to really take ownership of and not shy away from. And in those legacies, they talk about the women in their lives that have left a mark on them and the legacies those women left on them that therefore has come together to create the legacies that each of them are leaving behind. And you'll get more context about that in Kirby's legacy statement that you'll hear at the end of this episode. So let's tune in and step into this conversation between Kirby and Erika.
I don't even know where to start. I feel very overwhelmed by how great this entire experience has been, just because I've gotten to meet so many different incredible and powerful women. And I think that's something that I was very much lacking, something that I really needed in my life. And so I'm excited to continue just talking to you and learning more about you as we go, and just building on this kind of friendship that we've developed and go from there. So I'm excited.
Yeah, it's funny because we knew each other's names, but we had not met officially over the course of years.
Yeah, I sat at your table at...
so we did meet.
We met oh, hi, I'm Kirby. And you were like, hi, I'm Erika. And then you started talking and I was like, this woman's incredible. And you were talking about your business and how you've come to, create this community for women. And I was just like, oh my God, she's so cool. And then I did this program and I also had some friends who had known you and I was like, Erika's going to be my coach. And they all just raved about it. And so that just kind of built on the excitement. And then we met and I was like, oh yeah, we vibe, she's cool. We get along and it was perfect. It was a perfect match.
That's funny because Catherine took great pride in the pairings that she did.
Yes.
And I really enjoyed listening to her talk about who she was pairing because I heard a lot about that before I got paired, right?
Yeah.
So watching her have those pairings and why she was so excited about them. And I've had your name come up to me a lot of times. Apologies that I don't know we met at that table.
It was very brief. There were a lot of people there. That would have been
one of the times I heard your name. But your name had kept coming up. So when Catherine said, okay, and here's who I paired you with, and I'm really excited. I think you guys are going to work really well together. I was like, yes, I feel like this has been coming. Like, this is something that's going to be happening.
It's all been leading up to this.
It's all been leading up to Kirby and
if you
Erika.
will. Yeah. This is our thing.
Meeting together. But I think to your point about your lacking women and community around you, I did see that grow from the time we first met.
Absolutely.
And kind of your presentation's the wrong word, but just kind of your general, I really am looking for more of that to, the last time we chatted and you were like, the ladies then, and even just as an outsider, seeing your growth in community and the community that surrounded you was really fun to watch.
Yeah, it's been really wild, honestly. Like, I think, and a lot of this, has kind of been building. And then I think I just got into this program and started meeting with you. And it was kind of like, I don't want to say everything fell into place because it was a lot of work and it was a lot of work and dedication on behalf of so many people. But it was kind of like everything just started happening in terms of I started realizing a lot of things about myself that I had closed off for a long time or maybe not even acknowledged in a lot of ways. And just the freedom to say, this is who I am. This is who I want to be. This is what I want out of life has been a big changer for me, which is good.
Do you think it has anything to, let me rephrase that question. You mentioned that coming into leadership as a relatively young person, that you were kind of always working against that.
Yeah.
Do you feel like you now are more open to talking about what is happening, which then what impact is that making for you?
Yeah, I think that's a big part of it. I think, I was raised by Southern women and a very conservative, if you will, community. And, women didn't talk about hardships. Like, women don't talk about struggles or, if someone tells you to do something, you do it and you don't necessarily ask questions or ask the why behind it. And sometimes that causes conflict and that causes confrontation. And I think as women, or at least in my experience, we're taught to avoid that in a lot of ways. And it's something that I definitely, I don't want to confront anyone. I don't want to be a person who has to cause conflict. But when you get into these leadership roles, sometimes that's necessary and sometimes that's inevitable. And it's something that this process has helped me become more comfortable with because I've been able to realize, even as a young woman, coming into these spaces of women who are much more accomplished than I am, much more, quote unquote successful than I am, I still have a right to be there and I still have a place to be there. And I've gotten to this place through a lot of hard work and self-exploration. And, my ideas and what I have to say is vital and I need to express that. And sometimes that causes that confrontation. Sometimes it causes, some mishaps, but I have to do it anyway. And that's really what I've learned through this process is, it's going to be hard and it's going to be nasty sometimes, but you have to do it. You have to speak up for yourself. You have to speak up for the people you represent. And that's been the biggest thing that I don't want to say that I've learned because I feel like I always knew it, but this process and going through this program has helped me to better understand why I should keep going and continue to do that.
So that is definitely something we talked about, which is if you are saying this thing or if you are pushing back on this, it's not for your benefit. It's not Kirby pushing back.
Right.
It is Kirby pushing back because of the outcome that the organization you're leading is looking for.
Yeah.
So how has that changed your mindset as some of those hard conversations sometimes happen in an organization?
Yeah, I think it's me having to separate myself from the position that I'm in and remember who it is that I'm advocating for. I work for a women-centric organization. I work for an organization that advocates for mostly low-income women within East Tennessee. And, it's the interaction that I have with people day in and day out in my position is very different from just serving this group of women or this group of community members that we serve as an organization. And so it's very easy, I think, to get lost in the role of going out into the community and kind of being this person who's out and about and I don't want to say hobnobbing because that's like a weird word to me, but
representing.
But yeah, representing or rubbing elbows with like people who are, who oftentimes have never been a part of these communities that we're serving. And it's very easy, I think, to kind of lose your identity. And, I grew up with a single mother. She worked incredibly hard to provide for myself and my sister. There were times we didn't have food or she would go without dinner because like my sister and I had to eat first and foremost. And that was her priority. And so to now be in this position of still advocating for young women who grew up a lot like I did, but in these kind of different social circles that represent a lot of wealth and a lot of affluency. Is that a word? I don't even.
Well, and influence.
Yeah.
Right.
Even better. There you go. And influence. And it's hard to kind of separate myself from that. And so it's just taking a step back and really remembering, A, why I got into this job, B, why I do what I do, and C, who it is that we're representing and how we want to make an impact. And so it's been really good to kind of remove myself from the role that I'm in to kind of remember that part of myself, if that makes sense.
Yes, it does, Kirby.
Thank you.
Okay, one of my favorite things when we chatted was we were talking about legacy,
yes,
and doing your legacy statement.
Yeah,
and I asked a question, and you kind of went on. You love you some Audrey Hepburn.
Oh my gosh, I love Audrey Hepburn. Yeah. I mentioned Audrey Hepburn in my legacy statement.
You are dressed like Audrey Hepburn.
Thank
this
you.
moment. Okay.
Thank you.
So we were chatting about Audrey Hepburn and
yeah.
you had a whole thing about her legacy.
I was obsessed with her.
And then, which is
still am.
Great.
It's fine.
Perfect. But then I asked you about women in your life who maybe no one else has heard of.
Yeah.
But if they have left a legacy. Mm-hmm. So can you talk a little bit about that? What your thinking was as we had that conversation?
Yeah. I've always, we've talked about women a lot, and I think growing up, you always had this idea of maybe like famous women or celebrities or, they're so glamorous and they're so, you want to be like that and you want to be rich and you want to be famous and you want to be all these things and get to wear cool clothes. And so I think it's very easy to like idealize these women who you've never met. And I think when you start talking about a legacy statement, or at least when we started talking about this process, I was thinking for myself, I was like, wow, like, who are these women I want to live up to? And then I was like, look at the women around you that you've had interaction with day in and day out. And for me, that mostly like boils down to 4 women and I guess girl, my niece, my oldest niece, she's going to be 14. So I guess she's a young woman, and so it was who in my life have I had these daily interactions with that have really made me the person I am. And so for me, that's Ronnie, who was my first boss when I was at Girls Inc. many years ago and is now one of my best friends and someone who I talk to on a weekly basis. And I'm planning a trip to Vermont to see her later in the year, and I'm so excited. And she just had such an impact on my life in so many ways. But she kind of first came to mind because she was, I think I spent more time with her than probably anyone else because we worked 8 hours a day. I wasn't in a significant relationship at the time. And so I lived by myself. I would go home and I would do work, and that was all I did. And so really, like, in a lot of ways, my life revolved around this relationship with Ronnie. And it was a very positive relationship for me. And she was just absolutely incredible, and I love her to death. And then the other women were all a part of my family. So my niece that I mentioned, who's 14, she is a twin, and her brother is incredible as well, but I wanted this to be focused on young girls and women. So I have a snippet about Daisy, and Daisy is just the essence of, I think, what I wanted to be when I was 14. And I feel like she would have been too cool for me. You know what I mean? Like, not in the sense that she's like snobby or anything like that, but I feel like if I was 14 and I went to school with her, I'd be like, wow, like I want to be friends with Daisy.
I want to be Daisy.
Yeah, she's
I want to be
just
Daisy
so
when I
cool.
grow up.
And she's, but other than just being like the coolest kid, she's so kind and she's so just generous and loving, but she's also very, and this is what I talk about in my legacy statement, she's very unafraid to be herself, which I think as a 14-year-old can be incredibly scary, to just like open yourself up to the world. And it's something that I did not do when I was that age. And so I just really admire that about her. And then her mother, my sister, Ashley, who is older than me, we've, an older sister relationship, I think, is very complicated sometimes, because sometimes you're like so envious of that person, but sometimes you're also so just like enamored with who they are as an individual. And I think those two things can get complicated, but as I've gotten older, I just see that my sister is maybe the strongest, like physically and emotionally person I've ever known. She like got me into fitness and stuff. So I always like joke about how strong she is. She's like a beast in like the best way possible. But she provided a lot of security for me. I was going to say in my early 20s, but even growing up, even it was just the two of us. And like I said, my mother was a single mother for a while. And when my mother married my stepdad, he worked a lot and she worked a lot trying to provide for both of us. And so a lot of times it was just us. And she was always very protective of me and very provided that security that I think I needed a lot. And then in my early 20s, your early 20s are bad sometimes, and you don't know what's going on. And she had already been through all of that. And so everything that I was going through, she could kind of sympathize with and kind of help me through. And so that was amazing. And then my mother, who is just the most incredible and loving woman in the entire world, I think. And I have my best friend growing up, he would always joke about how nice my mom was. And he would say, I bet Kathy, that's my mom, I bet Kathy sleeps with a smile on her face. And so now we always talk about that. And we went on this trip once where we were on this big bus and my mom was taking a nap and she was like legitimately smiling. And so we always joke about, she's just the kindest person, but just so loving. And I think, her love is the reason that I do what I do, because I know that there are so many people who never had that, or who never had someone to just love and care for them in the way that my mother loved and cared for me. And it's a really fascinating thing, I think, to get to a point where I am now in my early 30s, in my adulthood, and look back and realize what a formative experience that was, having that love and care from my mother. And so those are just little snippets of what I want to give back to the world, hopefully.
So I want to go back to where we were sitting at that table talking about Audrey.
Yeah.
And then I said, okay, great. What about people in your life who maybe no one has heard of? And I remember that taking you aback. You were kind of like, oh, crap.
I know. I was like, oh my God. Like, there's so much. And I think maybe you don't think about it because it's always been there. And for me, it's kind of like, I think I took probably those 4 women or those 4 relationships even for granted, because in some sense they were always there. With my mother, that was never wavering, or my sister. And then Daisy came along and it was just how it should be. And, Ronnie, like I mentioned, was my first boss. And so I thought, this is just how bosses are. This is how you interact with the people that you work with. And so to then have that conversation with you where it was like, forget these people, or not maybe forget, but aside from these people that you've never met, that you have no connection with whatsoever, now think about the actual relationships that you have and the actual connections that you have. That was, like you said, it took me aback, but I think in the best way, because it made me realize that I had taken these relationships for granted at times. And it made me really think about the impact that they had truly had on me.
Well, and I think, too, part of that conversation was you recognizing that your legacy, your ability to leave a legacy, that you had maybe set the bar in such a place that was unattainable for you. And so that was where your struggle was. Mm-hmm. So I think what I saw come out of that was you recognized that your ability to leave a legacy was different.
Yeah.
Not that you were lowering the bar,
right,
but that you had always kind of measured yourself against what some would consider to be unattainable.
Definitely.
When in reality, you had examples all around you.
Yeah. And it's interesting because I think I always wanted to be, I don't want to say a person of influence because that sounds like super corny, but I had always wanted to be this person that people knew and like, you know, people look up to and people go to for advice, and people say, oh, Kirby, you know, she knows everyone. She's very like well connected and all these things. And in some ways, I think that I have a lot of that, and it's not very fulfilling. You know, it's not something that keeps me going like day to day. But then I was in the process of writing this legacy statement, and I was actually talking to my stepdad, and I was like, what do you think? Like, what do you think my legacy would be? And he mentioned like a couple of family friends, and he said, I think of the way that they light up when I say your name. And that's what I think that you've left behind. You know, it's not this person out in the community. It's this person who's been able to make these genuine connections with other people. And that was very eye-opening for me because it, you know, personal relationships, and the older I've gotten, these relationships are more evident in my life now, but it's becoming for me all about this connection that you make with an individual and what can you leave behind with that individual person. You know, if I can make that person happier or make that person feel more comfortable or, you know, provide that sense of sort of relief, that's kind of worth it to me. Like, I think we were having a conversation one time and I said, you know, one of the things that I hope people say about me is that they never had to worry about having a meeting with me, or they never felt anxiety about sitting down and talking to me the way that I feel when I chat with so-and-so. And
that they can, I think you said, so that they can show up as themselves.
Yes.
That people always feel like they can show up as themselves with you.
Yeah. And that's enough for me. And I think that if I had thought about that maybe 10 years ago, I wouldn't have acknowledged that that was enough. But now, being the person that I am, that's what I want. And that's enough for me.
Well, I just think that's lovely, Kirby.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's been a journey to kind of get to this place, because I think that, you know, I grew up feeling very, I think, separated from the community that I was in. I grew up in a very small town. It was very conservative, and I didn't identify with that. And so, you know, the option of settling down and getting married at a young age and having kids, that was not really an option for me because I didn't identify with that. And so I thought, well, then I have to go in the drastic opposite direction of becoming a, you know, workhorse and dedicating everything I have to my job. And for a while, that was great. And then I met Haven, who's now my partner, and we have this life together, and it's suddenly, you know, it's not just me, it's another person that I have to consider and I take into account, and it's the relationship that I want to pour myself into. And so, you know, I think it's a really big blessing to be at this point now in my life where I can balance the two, and I don't have to worry about, you know, being the most well-known person in a room.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing is, I will say, you showed up to our first meeting and you pulled out, like, I don't know, 7 notebooks and like 18 pens.
Oh my God.
on the table, and you're like, okay, let's go. And
that's not me.
I know.
In
and
a
I was
summary.
like, because let's be clear. This has been a learning experience for me too.
Yeah.
We've talked a lot about my business coaching
Yeah.
style is very different than the setup of this program.
Yeah.
So that was fun for me to kind of get to play in that sandbox
Right.
a little bit, right? And I was like, I thought we were just going to chat, but she wants a to-do list.
She's taking notes.
Yeah. What are we, so you walked in, you were kind of like, great, what's the to-do list? Let's just check this off and that was just the initial setup.
Yeah.
And to the end where it's like, oh, let me pull out I should probably write that down. let me pull that back out, So I think even just seeing that, because you and I don't interact professionally.
Right.
On really, we have to make the opportunity to sit and chat, right? So we have not overlapped a lot at a lot of social events or community events, et cetera. So it's not like we are we're in a relationship where we knew day to day what was going on outside of maybe what was happening on Instagram and you teaching me how to cook, right? So I was very able to see the difference between how you showed up at that first meeting and what your intent was, which was like, let's do the thing, to the last part, which was much more open and more interested in the process of the learning.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think you put that perfectly, because I think even walking into that first meeting, my initial, thinking was, what am I going to contribute to this? How am I going to impress this person? How am I going to take down everything she says and then take that back and, put it into a way that it makes sense for my life and all of these things. And that's fine. But I think I came at it from the perspective of just like what I said, like, how am I going to impress this person? And to me, that was thinking, write down every single thing that she says and write down, take notes on what you should do tomorrow and all these things. And then it became a sense of, I'm getting more out of this just talking and learning, like really listening and learning from this individual. And that's what this is about. Like, that's the point of this, and we went through this whole listening and communication section of our program, and it was really eye-opening in a lot of ways, because I learned a lot about myself, and I use those techniques now in everyday life. And it's really been incredible to see that kind of transformation in just a short amount of time.
Yeah. Well, even just your general body language, if you think about the first time you came in versus, the other, it was just really, it's the first time that I've had an in-person, like we'll say long-term, because what was it, six months?
Weeks,
where
or months, whatever.
Yeah, where the physical, I could see the physical transformation, like of body language, right? And or comfort with who you were, because you a little buttoned up the first go around, back straight.
Yeah, very like rigid almost. Yeah.
To the much more comfortable, not in your own skin, but just comfortable with who you were walking into the meeting.
Absolutely.
Right.
And I think that's even what I said, I think at our first session for the Let Her Lead program, we talked about what do we want to get from this experience. And I'm pretty sure I said something to the effect of, I want to feel like I can be a leader while still being my authentic self. And I think that I don't want to say accomplished that, because it's still a work in progress, but I think I've gotten a lot closer to what I view that as being. And I think that everything you just said kind of speaks to that, because I am a lot more comfortable in myself now, and I think it shows.
And isn't that funny that that's what you're known for, is people being able to show up like that with you?
Yeah. It's almost that like giving, like giving the same grace to yourself that you give to other people. And that's, I think for most women, is probably a very difficult thing. And certainly for myself, but it's something that I've actively tried to work on in the last 6 months to a year. And it's paid off a lot, I think, in a lot of ways.
All right, just for fun.
Yeah. I love fun stuff.
Let's talk affirmations.
Yeah. Oh, great. The fun
Which is
stuff.
like so not my. I was like, listen, I am not a woo woo like affirmation.
Yeah.
I lean way more into the woo than I like. The older I get, the more woo there is. But affirmations are not my like normal thing. But we tried that with you, and we were like, let's write some affirmations down. And so tell us how that went.
It went really well. I'm a lot like you in that sense. I think that growing up, I think it's the woo-woo thing, because isn't that part of like some sort of strengths assessment? Like woo is like an actual attribute that you have in some sort of something. Anyway,
we'll research that later. I have no idea, Catherine. Where are they? Where's woo?
But it's funny because like growing up in my early 20s, social media was, Instagram specifically was becoming like the thing. And I remember all over Instagram, you would see like woo-woo girls, and it would be girls who just like at a bar and they're like, woo, Yeah. And I was always like, oh my God, like I don't want to be like that, And now I'm like, why don't I want to be like that? Like they're just having fun and they're having, what? And so I think a lot like you, as I get older, I'm leaning more into that part of myself. But the actual affirmations are still hard. And we practiced it. I was having a potentially difficult meeting coming up, and it was something that I was already, I think it was like a week before maybe that meeting took place, and I was already feeling nervous and dejected, and I'm going to walk in this meeting and I'm just going to get, harsh feedback or whatever it might be. And we just did this simple affirmation of, I'm intelligent, I am knowledgeable, I got to this position because of my hard work and experience and because of my knowledge. And I took that over like a weekend and just really tried to, not necessarily in the mirror, because that for some reason is harder.
That's a bridge too far.
Yeah. I was like, I can't look at myself while I say this, but maybe one day. But just like even in moments of, rest, when I was just like on the couch or watching TV or reading a book, if I would pause, like I would try to just kind of reiterate to myself, like, you are knowledgeable, you are smart, you are intelligent. And, those are things that you hear from other people. And I've always been like, oh, like they just say that because they like me or they're my friend or my family or whatever. And then you say it to yourself and it's like you finally start to believe it. Or at least that's what the experience was for me. And so that is still a hard thing for me to do. But it was a comforting experience almost. Like I felt not even more comfortable, but I just felt comforted, like from myself for maybe one of the first times in a very long time.
Well, and if anyone feels like maybe it got a little too, we did write it on a whiteboard.
Yes, we did. It was laid out.
We did
professional.
We did let ourselves do a very like type A situation where we wrote, we were like, yes, we will say hard things out loud, but also we'll just write it on a whiteboard.
Yes. Because I am a little bit type A.
Yeah.
In case you didn't notice.
What else, Kirby? This has been fun for a
I know,
completely unplanned combo.
I want to hear more about your trip to Europe because I have been thinking about it since you got back. Like, well, I don't know when you got back.
Well, and I want to talk about your run too.
Oh, yes.
Your race too. Okay.
Yes.
So
let's talk about both.
Well, you and Haven actually really are great examples of like just traveling and slow travel, I think. What I perceive as slow travel, right?
Yes.
As we have talked about, there's a lot of type A happening here. So generally when my husband and I travel, we've got a very like already set schedule.
Yeah.
I mean, I have a travel agent like back-ish ground. I'm a logistics manager.
Yeah.
Everything is planned, and we didn't have time to do that before this trip. And so this was a two-week trip to Europe for our 20th anniversary, and we had an 8-hour layover in Philadelphia, and we spent that 8 hours in Philadelphia planning the trip.
Okay, so I love this.
I'm talking like the 8 hours on our way.
Yeah.
So we looked up the museums we wanted to see. We booked tickets. There were a lot of things we couldn't get tickets for because, we were almost there.
It happens.
And it was just the most relaxed it was awesome. We just were there to enjoy, not to sightsee. So that was really nice. And the amount of free space in my brain and what that meant for being able to think about family stuff and business stuff without having any of the to-do in front of me was super great. And then at the end of it, the biggest takeaway, my husband and I both were, we were excited to get back. Like we weren't.
I love that. Yeah.
It was the first time we've traveled where our kids were more self-sustaining. So we weren't going on vacation to get a break. We were going on vacation to hang out with each other.
Right.
And then we chatted with our kids the whole time. Like we missed them significantly while we were gone and chatted with them and texted and kind of all of that. So by the time it was over, because 14 days is a long time, we were ready to get back to our kids. We were excited to get back to work and kind of launch the things we wanted to do. And I even said, I wish the kids were out for another week because we missed a lot of their holiday break because we were traveling over there. I said, I wish they were out for another week so we would have some time to hang out with them. And so I willed a blizzard into existence.
That's right.
Sorry about
Erica's responsible.
Sorry about that.
Erica brought the snow.
Okay, tell me about your race.
I love that. Well, first, just let me say we missed all of the snow because we were traveling.
I know, you were on the beach.
I think people were very jealous, but we also loved the snow. And so we were kind of sad at first that we missed it. And then it was like Thursday and people were still trapped in their homes. And I was like, no, that can't be me. I'm very happy to hear that about your trip to Europe. We went last October and we felt the exact same way. And that's funny because your trip of not having anything planned is like Haven's dream and my nightmare. So so I remember one day he was like, can we just take like a day and not plan anything and just walk around and like figure out what we want to do? And I was like, yes, of course we can do that. And then it, just like what you said, it ended up being like so freeing and just the most relaxing. Like I told him the other day, I was like, I think that's the most relaxed I've ever been in my life. And so it was wonderful. But yes, I am doing the Covenant Half Marathon in April. Just, no worries. But my other race,
yes.
I didn't get to do it.
No.
Did we talk about this?
No.
Yeah.
Sorry, we haven't caught up.
Yeah, I ended up not getting to do it because of some scheduling issues. But so
well,
I trained for it. So I trained for a half marathon and then just never really got to do it, which is kind of upsetting. But so I'm very excited because now I'm doing the Covenant Half Marathon in April. So it's local, it's in Knoxville, so I'm excited about that. I've heard it's like super hard though. So
it's uphills both ways.
Yeah. Oh, great. Yeah. That's fantastic. I knew it was hilly, but that sounds
It's
fun.
just the one in where is that at? It's just one real bad one.
Okay.
But yeah, if you've trained on any of the hills, you're good to go.
I haven't, but that's fine.
Add training on some of those.
Yeah. But I work with a really great nutrition coach who also does, she runs marathons and she's a triathlete. And so she puts together like a training program. And she told me that my training program that starts officially today is like a step up from beginner. And I was like, you have a little too much faith in me, but I'm excited. So yeah, it'll be really good. I'm excited to actually like get to go through the process of running a half marathon this time as opposed to just training for one. So it'll be a lot of fun though. I don't consider myself like an athlete or a runner or like anything like that, but I do really enjoy the process of like fitness and health and like taking care of yourself. And I think with what I do working in nonprofits, which can often be very hectic and very time consuming, it's good to kind of mark out those spaces for yourself where you can just kind of push everything to the side and only focus on what's happening in the moment. And that's what I do with like my fitness routine. And so it's a form of like self-care, but also just really good for me mentally. And I love my gym and where I go, and there's a supportive group there, and Haven's really supportive. And so I'm excited. I'm excited for actually going through the entire process this time.
Well, and if you take that back to where you're talking about your first job, right? Where you worked and then you went home and you worked because you weren't doing anything else. And that is a change that you've made over the years.
Yeah.
Adding a relationship and recognizing the need for being an individual, et cetera. I mean, that's what this is. It's just supporting that idea.
Yeah. It's just, supporting that idea. And like I said, like doing what I want to do and being the person that I want to be apart from what I've always conceived or like expectations of me.
Okay, so fun last question then, I
Yeah.
suppose. When I ran, I made grocery list in my head. What do you think about?
Wow, that sounds. I'm not going to try that because I don't think I could focus that long. I like to listen to things. So depending on the length of my run, I will listen to either music or an audiobook. So like if I'm doing so today I'll start with 4 miles. So I'll probably listen to like a musical soundtrack, or something that I know like all the words to so that I can kind of like sing in my head and like go from there. But once I get to like 7, 8, 9 mile runs, I'll probably listen to an audiobook because I'm also a slower runner. I'm not at the phase of being super speedy. And so if I like slow things down, I feel like an audiobook is like a really good tempo for me. Like I can get invested in a story and not focus so much on the pain that I might be in. Yeah. And so
The lack of ability to breathe.
Exactly. So that's normally what I listen to.
Okay, I like it.
Yeah. So today I'm going to listen to 6. That's going to be
I was going to ask what musical.
I've already decided, yeah.
Have you seen Mean Girls, the musical movie?
No,
yet?
but I want to
so
see
good.
it. Is it? Okay,
Yes.
good. I saw
And the
it
soundtrack's
on
amazing.
stage last year when it came to the Tennessee Theater, but I really want to see the movie.
Yeah, the movie's very well done.
Okay, good.
Okay, I have one more marathon thing to say.
Yeah.
My kids were always like, "Did you win?" And I was like, "Listen, I finished."
Which is
a
win.
I was like, "I'm not racing. I'm just running."
Yeah, exactly. I love that. Yeah. And you did win.
I did.
Because you did it. Proud of you.
Now that you've had an opportunity to learn about Kirby's leadership journey, let's listen in as she shares the legacy she wants to leave behind.
Legacy. What is a legacy? It's planting seeds in a garden you never get to see. A quote from the critically acclaimed musical Hamilton. When I first began this vast project of determining my legacy, this quote kept coming to mind. Legacy. What is a legacy? It's planting seeds in a garden that you never get to see. The words from the musical Hamilton proved powerful while singing them in my car, but when applied to my own life, made my own legacy seem insufficient. How does one compare to the legacy of someone like Alexander Hamilton, or to the individuals that I would desire to be compared to, women like Audrey Hepburn or Michelle Obama? My life and what I hope to leave behind could hardly compare to the groundbreaking work of so many. But then I thought, why does it have to? While these women that I've always aspired to be like have had revolutionary work in the world and are certainly to be admired, I have had my own set of powerful women that, for me, rival any celebrity, activist, or humanitarian. Because these are the women who built me, the women who encouraged me, the women who helped me build my legacy. So what does my legacy look like? What will be in my garden? And what will it produce despite my never getting to see its beauty? Sunflowers. When I was in the 5th grade, I got a packet of sunflower seeds from my school and became obsessed with the thought of having my sunflower garden. However, I do not have a green thumb, but sunflowers are strong and resilient. They also represent loyalty, faithfulness, and warmth. They always point and reach for the bright light. And so for me, my sunflower is Ronnie. My first real big girl boss and my first real big girl job. Ronnie taught me how to be strong and resilient like the sunflowers I've always wanted. She taught me how to withstand storms, both big and small, and to always reach for the light. She has helped me in countless ways, not the least of which is by helping me realize what I am capable of and how to be a leader in my community. Through Ronnie, I can create my legacy of providing mentorship, guidance, and support to a new generation of young women entering a sometimes very scary world. Also in my garden, daisies. For my Daisy, my oldest niece that allows me to see the world through her eyes. Daisies represent innocence and childhood, and for me, never losing sight of fun and play. I've learned this from Daisy. Growing up, I took my childhood and teenage years so seriously, never allowing anyone to see the parts of me that I saw as imperfect. But Daisy showed me how to see the world with fun, laughter, and enjoyment. She is open with her hugs and laughter and has taught me to be so as well. Through my legacy, I will leave a stream of daisies in my wake as I sing, dance, twirl, and live through the childlike wonder of life. Blue hyacinths will be in my garden. This flower serves as a beautiful reminder of consistency, something I desperately needed and received from my sister Ashley in my early 20s when my anxiety and depression made me feel like I was spinning out of control. During one of the darkest periods of my life, my sister would text me at 6 a.m. every morning because she knew that it made me feel better. She would invite me to stay at her house, play with her children, and stay for the weekend because she knew it was easier to be in a supportive and loving space than alone with my thoughts. She provided a consistency that got me through and helped me to see that my legacy is in turn using my mental health struggles and voicing my experiences to help others. And the final flower in my garden will be red roses, the most obvious symbol of love for the most loving person in my life, my mother. I think a lot of us take for granted the love of a mother, and it's something that I have never gone without, but something that was threatened in my teenage years. When I was 16, my mother was diagnosed with breast cancer. We were all very scared, but my mother's first and swift response to everything was an outpouring of love, loving each member of our family and teaching us to do the same with our community. Love those who are hurting and struggling while also loving those who are near and dear to our hearts. She showed that mother's love to not only me and my sister, but also all of our friends, especially my best friend Zachary, who needed a motherly figure. She taught us all to love by showering us with love, and it's a lesson that I know we have all carried with us. And for me, it's made me the person I am today. I know for certain that I wouldn't be here without my mother's love, and that is the legacy that I hope to leave with my family, friends, and community. So what does my garden look like? What is my legacy that I will never get to see? It's strength and resilience, childlike wonder, consistency, and love. As a daughter, mother, brother, husband, community member, etc., you are planting seeds that you will never see, but will make a lasting impact. What will your seeds grow into? What will your legacy be?
This episode of She Speaks is brought to you by our amazing partners at Shod Companies. She Speaks is produced, edited, and scored by the very talented Travis Tench at Oak Hill Audio. If you loved the episode you just heard and want to support Let Her Speak's mission of elevating real women's stories, don't forget to follow, subscribe, and share at Let Her Speak USA. Together, we will make our voices heard.